Yeah, so migrating assets it's working on the sort of opposite way as you're usually used to in 3D applications, but because, or at least in 3D Studio Max and Blender, if you want to get stuff from another project, you like open your project you want to get your assets into, and then you choose another file and migrate the assets from that place. I don't know how Cinema works. Is it the same there?
It's basically drag and drop
Yeah. Okay.
from for example, we use Blockbench a lot. So exporting out an OBJ or FBX from Blockbench, and then just drag those files into Cinema, and it just
Yeah.
works
But
with the structure kept intact.
okay. I was sort of more of meaning if you want to get stuff from another cinema file into your cinema project,
Ooh.
you grab them from the project you're working in, right?
Ah, a cinema can open several projects at once. Just open another project and
Okay.
copy paste it into uh, the file I'm working on. Very flexible and nice.
That's nice as well. Yeah, Blender is the same, just Control C, Control V stuff. 3D Studio Max, not so much. Then you have to like file, import,
Mm,
choose your other Max file, and find the correct asset, which is
mm.
of course named like box 001 or something.
New final free.
Yeah. Um, Unreal Engine does it the other way around because you work in your, or I can just show you, that's easier. So I'll just start sharing screen. There we go. Um, so if I, for example, want to have, if I want to like get these cubes into another Unreal Engine project, for example, I need to sort of select them in this project, in which I'm working, and I can select one or more assets. But let's just pick one for now, and I'm just going to do one more thing before we start. So I'll just create a new folder called content. Oh, there already was one. Nice. Of course. Nice. So the way of operation is you select your asset in Unreal Engine, and then you right click it, and you find the asset actions in the middle of the pop-up window. And then you have the migrate option. And here is one of those nice things. I don't know if you remember on Thursday, I just mentioned that if you move an asset within your project, Unreal Engine keeps track of all the connections. So if you like, for example, move a texture into another folder, you don't have to like repoint in the material where that texture lives anymore. And this is sort of takes that into consideration as well, because if I right click this static mesh cube and press migrate, it will directly select all its dependencies as well. So it will get the
Oh.
actual block, and it will get the material and the texture that the material is using. And here you can, of course, uncheck stuff. So if you only need the static mesh, for example, or only need the material, you can just uncheck the other ones. But if
A question. If you, for example, is this copying the file to another location, or is it a shortcut to the original file? For example, the texture file.
No, this is a full copy. Unreal Engine
Okay.
works with copies.
Hmm.
Even like when you drag a texture into your project, it makes a copy from your original
Hmm.
like download folder or textures folder or whatever, and then it just takes that texture and copies it into your project folder. So
Hmm.
that's what I meant on Thursday, that Unreal Engine
Yeah.
quickly eats your hard drive because it makes copies of
Mm.
everything.
So if you want to change one leaf on a texture and you have it in several places, you have to change all the files and not
Yes.
one file then. Okay.
Yes. But once you've selected your assets for migration, you can press OK, and then you will get another window which says, this is really important, choose a destination content folder. So you need to find the content folder of the project you want to migrate your assets into. But it can also be like I did here. I just created a content folder or a folder named content on my desktop, for example. So if you want to create like a content pack, which we sort of spoke about, you can just make a content folder somewhere where you sort of collect all the assets you want to bring into that content pack. And once you're in a content folder, you can press select. And okay, didn't work. Anyways, I thought it should work. Now I just have to find instead my Unreal Engine, and I'm just gonna go into this content folder instead and select, and it will also, this is a standing bug in Unreal Engine. When you migrate an asset, it looks like the actual assets gets like cut from your project because they disappear in your content browser. And that's not the case. It's usually just you have to like
Kind of refresh.
yeah, exactly. However,
Scary stuff.
yeah, I think this has gotten quite a few people a little bit sweaty during the years.
So do you refresh with just like switching the folders there?
I thought I did, but it doesn't refresh anyways. See if closing the... No, they're gone. Sorry. But I think since it was this asset, the grass block, I think I should be able to... No? Okay. New errors, which has been in the engine for a while, but they've made it worse apparently. In 5.5 and earlier, you just sort of needed to switch folders and then it came back, but now it seems to be permanently gone. That's nice.
So there is no way to do this the other way around.
No, you
Import into the project you have open.
no, not from a like U asset file.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Okay.
if we do like this, perhaps. Show in Explorer. Let's see. So that's a little bit boring because you can't like go into your projects folder in Explorer and find the actual U asset. So here it is, grass block U asset. It's still there, but I can't see it in the engine for some reason. But you can't like copy this one in Windows and then browse into another project and paste it. That won't work, sadly, for some unknown reason. And there's no way of like add or import and then choose another U asset file either. You can only import like FBX and OBJ and image textures. So that's a little bit of a downside, but once you sort of get used to it, it's kind of handy as well, especially the collection of dependencies is nice. That also works with like blueprints. So if we were to like migrate over like a first-person blueprint from this project to another, it would also grab all those dependencies, and it can quickly become a lot of stuff that's dependent. And that's also like with the data smith and the data prep we did last week. If I were to, I think, didn't we add the data table? Yeah. So if I
did.
to right click and migrate this one, it should also include the data table file as well. So it sort of keeps track of everything that's sort of dependent, or it is dependent on, rather. So that's a good thing about it, at least. So if you want to like create your own data pack later on, I think it's the easiest way is to just create a new project file somewhere and migrate all your assets into that content folder, and then copy that folder to another place and follow the guide. I think that's the way I think I'm gonna try and do it later on, at least.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's on migrating assets. I thought we'd continue a little bit on the geometry part of things and have a look at setting up LODs and what actually Nanite is. I don't think you will need it that much, but we'll have a look at it, and also I can warn you of one error that usually happens with Nanite as well, so you don't have to get all sweaty later on. Which apparently I learned the other week. They have actually made a fix for that I didn't know of, but that's nice as well. But this is the thing with Unreal Engine, as usual. You just have to know there's stuff been changed and there's a checkbox somewhere that fixes your problem. I will also have a quick look at collisions on like meshes. That's mostly for like gameplay usually, so you sort of know which assets you can or can't walk through, for example. But it's also needed for like particle simulations in Unreal Engine, because if you want something to bounce off a surface, for example, it needs collisions enabled. And if we and we're also going to have a look at the landscape tools and Foliage, which is the tool to like paint objects onto other objects, for example. And if we have time after those things, I'm gonna grab one of my points from the next session actually and start looking at a little bit of sequencer and how to like set up animations for video. So you can play with that over the summer if you want to. But that's
Great.
if we have time left today, which I think we will. So
Yeah, that sounds good.
so all these nanite collisions and LOD things is done in the let's see if I can find this one now. Not yet. Oh. So we will have to do it on the dirt block instead, since the grass block apparently doesn't exist in my project anymore. All of these things happens in the static mesh editor, which you get to by just double clicking a static mesh. So when you import something into Unreal Engine, Nanite is enabled by default, and Nanite is Unreal Engine's sort of automatic LOD system that they introduced in 5.0, I do believe. If you remember that like demo video where they were running like a big cave system, and it was all on like PS5 hardware, and
Yeah,
there were
with all the
many.
lights bouncing off.
Yeah, that's Lumen, which is Nanite's rendering friend. But Nanite is for like scaling down geometry at a distance. So it sort of basically just removes triangles when you...
They showed also, I think, a massive forest, if I believe, and it was all like real-time rendering, which is very impressive.
Yeah, that was the PCG demo, which came a little bit later. But Nanite, you find here in Nanite settings, you can see it's enabled. You can also access this by just right-clicking a static mesh, and at the top here you have Nanite, and it's enabled in this checkbox. But here's the one thing: if you just press this checkbox, it usually doesn't. Okay, they fixed that as well. Nice, because earlier you had to like actually click the disable Nanite from the menu here, so I don't know why they had the checkbox, but now they have fixed that setting. So they actually do something when they update the engine to a new version sometimes. But you can also enable or disable it in the static mesh editor by just checking or unchecking this checkbox. And since this mesh is like, what is it, 12 faces, it's kind of quick and it really doesn't need it anyways. But if you were to have like a 3D scanned wall or something, I think actually we're gonna get one of those and have a look at instead while talking about Nanite. So let's see if I can grab one of those photo scanned cliffs or something real quick. Cliff. Add to project. Okay. Static mesh. So now we have this photo scanned cliff in our Minecraft world as well. Nice. This is easier to look or understand what Nanite does instead of a Minecraft block. So if we have a look at this one instead, because this one is Nanite triangles, 5000. So if we disable Nanite for this one, I'm not sure how many it actually is. But wireframe, okay, it's not that bad anyways. But if you like drag 100 of these into your viewport, things would probably start to go slowly. But what Nanite does, and if we have it enabled, I think we can actually see it inside of here as well. Optimization. No, sadly. So we have to do it out in the Nanite visualization. Okay. So here you can see the actual like triangles that the mesh is built out of. And it's not the one I wanted to have. There's one other way of visualize this triangles. I think this one usually starts to remove them when you're getting further away. Yeah, I don't know if you can see, but when I get further away from this object, it will sort of change how many triangles it's showing. It might be a little bit difficult over Teams.
Yeah, the compression does not show it.
No. I think we should be able to change the precision maybe, and so we can see it more easily maybe. Keep triangle percent. No. Let's try and change. See what this does. If it's let's see. Okay, so now you should be able to see that it sort of jumps. If I can deselect. Do you see something happening on the mesh now when I move back and forth?
Yeah.
So that's what Nanite sort of does. It just like magically removes triangles when you are further away from stuff, instead of setting up your own LODs.
And that doesn't require you to have a separate texture for Nanite version, right? It kinda
Yeah, exactly. It just does it automatically. So if you are in like normal lit mode, you won't ever see anything happen to the mesh. Even if I like fly all over here, nothing sort of, you can't see the switch between two levels of detail, for example, which was the old way. Like trees is usually a giveaway in games. When you like get
and
close
bushes,
enough, it
yeah.
just switches to another mesh.
Yeah, I guess that's very good for optimizing as well, because then you don't have to have 3 different models of low res, low poly, mid poly, and high
Yeah.
poly.
Although Nanite doesn't always work as it should, and trees is one of those things that it at least has been bad at. I'm not sure they have fixed it completely, because when they introduced Nanite, like you could really see how triangles in the sort of leaf mesh disappeared, and when you got further away from trees, it was almost like just toothpicks left, and all the leaves were gone, and just a piece of the trunk was still there. So Nanite didn't really know how to handle those kinds of meshes. But it's
Did
really...
they show Nanite tree foliage thing in the Witcher 4
Yeah.
show? So it probably isn't released yet, but it's coming.
Yeah. So trees seems to still be one of those things that you sort of need to do your own LODs for if you want to optimize your game. And I thought we'd just have a look at how that works as well. It's not that useful for like recording videos, which you will be doing mostly, I think, but it can still be nice to know how to do it. So I thought we'd try creating some LODs for our nice Minecraft trees. So there's a couple of ways of doing it, and it's done in the static mesh editor. I have disabled Nanite for this one because you have to choose between Nanite or LOD. You can't set up LODs if Nanite is enabled. And the LOD is handled from obviously this menu down here. We can just collapse the Nanite completely. So by default, it's only just LOD 0, which is the top level one, the most detailed. And if you want to add more, okay, my computer just needs to do some thinking. Can you still hear me, by the way?
Yeah,
Okay.
and we see you
Yeah.
too. But your screen share is frozen, I think.
Everything except my mouse pointer and my voice apparently is frozen, so
Your camera is showing.
I think I'm gonna turn that off to just save some resources. If I can. It did this on Thursday as well, but only for a couple of seconds. But today it seems to be really angry. And the fans are going like crazy as well.
I guess it's a very, very high poly tree we're working with.
Apparently so, yeah. Okay. Now it seems to
Yeah, now it's working again.
behaving a little bit better, yeah. Yeah, all those polygons. Oh my god, can't have that. Yeah, so LOD. The way to get more LODs, the first way is to, on this LOD import part of the menu, we have a drop down where it says LOD 0. And there's a import LOD level 1. So if you press that, you get a browse window, which wants you to select your LOD1 FBX mesh. So you can prepare different FBXs to begin with, like one high poly, one little bit lower, and a little bit lower, and so on. And the final one can even be like just two planes with transparent like texture on it. like a billboard. That's how games usually does it. So it's just billboards in the horizon of the forest, for example. I do believe I did one of these trees a little bit lower detail when I prepared this the other week. So a tree, log 1, look here, Minecraft tree. So this one is sort of the same, but I just removed a few faces with like decimate modifier. It looks like crap, but it sort of gives you an idea how it works. And you can see it directly in the viewport here as well. So if I sort of move away, it will change into the LOD1 mesh instead. And this also even has another material on it. So if we drag the same once, it will become a little less weird.
Do you have a setting for the distance it triggers at, or is it automatic?
Yeah, I was gonna get to that in a second. Tree materials. I think we're gonna do like this as well and use the Minecraft look on the tree instead. So now it changes into the LOD1. Let's see here. You can set up your LOD settings. Let's see, yeah, here. So LOD 0 is the first one. And if we choose LOD 1 instead, let's see, it's on some auto at the moment. Because it doesn't work on distance, but a auto. So LOD 0. I just need to find that setting again, because you are supposed to be able to change number.
One question. Is there a way to filter the settings so you don't see so much, or is it just the drop downs there?
Yeah, either the drop downs, which you can collapse or expand. There's also the search bar at the top. That was something else. But I don't think you can like filter on only, like, I just want to show the LOD settings in this window at least. Out in the details pane for objects, you can sort of filter it on these different things at least, like general, actor, LOD, miscellaneous and so on, or just all. So it's a little bit different in which window you're working, sort of. But I just want to find my custom LOD 1 screen size. Yeah, why can't I change this one? today. Because how it works is it's not dependent on the distance from the actual actor, but how big percentage of the screen it sort of populates at the moment, which determines when it swaps to another LOD. So since this is set at 0.75, so once the mesh is smaller than 75% of the screen, it should switch over to the next LOD, sort of. And you're supposed to be able to change this value manually. But I will dig into how or why I can't do it when we take our break in like half an hour, and I'll get back to that. This is typical teacher problems. This usually works when I'm preparing, but it doesn't work when I'm presenting.
Typical.
Yeah. There's also another way of creating LODs directly in editor as well. So if I choose import LOD level 2 here instead, and then just I can pick the same FBX as the original tree. See if I can grass block, or we just do the same LOD 0 instead. But then you can, okay, now my computer starts to behave badly again. Importing these giant meshes is apparently difficult.
One question in the meantime. How would you say, like, for example, we're in Unreal 5.6, and like how relevant are like old tutorials for Unreal Engine? Like 5.4, is that like totally worthless to watch?
No, I mean, some things, or rather most things, are still relevant. The only thing is that prior 5.x the UI looks really weird and different, but most things still work kind of the same. Of course, some features has been added and some things you really don't need to do anymore, for example. But I'd say most old tutorials still work.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. Good stuff.
As long as you can sort of translate how or where you find the settings in the
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, yeah, if they like move around the buttons all the time, and yeah, then it becomes like super hard to watch.
Yeah, they usually don't do that too much, except for when they updated the UI from 4 point something into 5 point something. They did an overhaul of the user interface. But most things were still in the sort of same place. They mostly like just did nicer icons and made the UI like darker gray instead and stuff. The biggest thing happened in this update to 5.6, where they actually changed these sort of buttons in that controls the viewport. So this row up here and these were inside of the sort of viewport window before, and they also swapped places from right to left for some reason, which has made everyone really happy. let's see here.
I think I found why you can't change the screen size.
Mm-hmm.
LOD, if you go down to LOD settings,
Yes.
bit further down, the next chapter, so to speak.
Auto compute, maybe.
Yes, exactly. Uncheck that one, and then you can change it.
Ah, yeah, of course. Typical. Thanks, Yuki, by the way.
I just searched around while you were talking about
Yeah.
UI.
Ah, nice. So LOD 0 now has a screen size of 1, which it should have. It's the top one, sort of. And if I choose like LOD 1, yeah, now we can change this to like 0.66 instead. So it changes. Now we have to do the auto again. So now it swaps a little bit later to LOD 1 instead. And if we now choose the number 2 here, we can also change that screen size to like 0.33 instead. So it changes way out, but it still does, it has the same mesh as the LOD1 so far, because I want to show you the reduction settings, which is included as well. So you can just automatically or do it inside of Unreal Engine instead. So if we zoom out enough, we can start dragging this percent triangles down, see if something happens. Apply. Oh yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it is really beautiful, because now, since this texture is a little bit weird for LODs, I don't know if you remember, but this material uses a texture which includes, you know, a lot of, well, that's not the material. A lot of the blocks at the same place. So the LOD will also sort of drag the UVs around a little bit. So I think that's the reason, because we have the tree up here and some of the sort of redstone-ish will get into the mesh as well when we see if I can find my, here we go. Yeah, so that's the reason. But if you had like a normal tree where the material and texture for the leaves were only the leaves, it wouldn't be that obvious. But this is one way of also creating your LODs instead of making different meshes in like Cinema or Blender and export different FBXs for it. And my computer needs a little bit of a break again, apparently. See if I can save this and get out into the editor world instead. Because now that we've set these LODs up, it should also show up in the world as well with these screen size settings.
Is that a typical issue where Unreal would freeze even if we have low poly models?
No.
Or is it your level is filled with a lot of assets and needs to recalculate or something?
I think it's just my computer running Unreal Engine and recording video through OBS and streaming to Teams at the same time is putting a little bit of strain. Yeah, so now you can see the different LODs on these trees in the editor as well. So if I move this away, you can also see. So that's one way of like optimizing your game, and that's mostly for games since it's supposed to be rendered as in real time. But if we were to enable Nanite for this tree again, you won't have the LOD showing anymore. So Nanite overrides any LOD settings. But if
is Nanite like more taxing on the system to recalculate, because it creates like a very seamless result compared to having LODs?
I really don't know. It seems to be some sort of black magic that Epic has created, really. Since that's at least what they themselves say, that you can like bring millions of polygons into your scene and just press
Just
go, more or
works.
less. Yeah.
Cool.
The only thing is that it sort of breaks sometimes, like with foliage trees, for example.
So anything with transparency would break it.
Yeah, and transparent things is also one of those weird bugs with Nanite. And I thought I'd just mention it. I don't think you will stumble upon it that much, but if you import an object into Unreal Engine which has multiple material slots, like a good example is like a car, where you have like the, for example, maybe element 0 is the car paint, and element 1 might be the rubber for the tires, and then maybe you have chrome, and then you have your windshield, which is supposed to be transparent. And then you try and nanite the whole car mesh, and it will completely break because of that transparent material in one of the slots. Apparently these days there's a setting in transparent materials which you can enable, so it sort of handles nanite anyways. But the old way was to instead, if you exported your car, you just separated the transparent meshes like the windshield and headlight glass and stuff into different meshes, so you get the whole car except for the glass materials in one mesh and then the glass materials in another mesh, and then you could run Nanite on it at least. But that took me and an intern a couple of days when we worked on a project a couple of years ago to figure out why our mesh just looked like crap, because Nanite broke in a way, sort of our mesh looked like this tree in the back more or less, instead of a actual machine which it was supposed to look like, until we figure out that, oh, there's a transparent texture or material here, and when we disabled transparency it worked. So that's one thing to keep in mind when working with Nanite. If the mesh somehow looks like a weird jumbled mess instead of how it's supposed to, it's probably because of some transparency. I think we're gonna look at also the collision settings in the static mesh before we take a little break. Should we go for 10:15 today as well?
Yeah, that's good.
Sounds good.
So now we have our tree here. I think I'm gonna enable Nanite again. Load 0. Thank you. For some reason it seems that it's the static mesh editor that makes my computer cry. That's really, really weird. Maybe it's... I don't know. See if I can get it to work a little bit better.
Can you have like custom LODs and still have Nanite on?
Yeah, you can create your custom LOD levels like we did. So they're still saved in the static mesh, even if I enable Nanite again. But then it will use Nanite in the game, sort of, until I uncheck Nanite. But I will still have my LOD setup saved, so it doesn't like overwrite it or anything.
Okay, but say you have, for example, trees then that you set up custom LODs for. Then would it work with like having all the other assets on Nanite?
Yeah, of course. That's on a like asset level. You choose if it's nanited or LOD'd or nothing. Like if you just want a hero object, for example, you don't do anything.
Okay, cool.
This is really annoying. Sorry about this. Seems like my computer also is really, really longing for vacation. Would you like to know? Okay, I'm just gonna try and not run this in full screen, see if that helps, maybe. Maybe. Okay, let's try this again then. LOD 0 again, thanks, and enable Nanite. So collisions, we can like create different collisions from this collision menu up on top here, and you can like do the auto convex. It will just create a convex hull sort of representation of the object, or you can even have easier ones like a sphere simplified, and you could just keep the sort of mesh bounds inside of a sphere or capsule or box or something. But if you do the auto convex collision, for example, it will create, as you can see, a sort of good representation of the mesh, as you can see with these sort of triangles. It's not perfect for this sort of mesh, and you can change these numbers to sort of get more triangles for the collision mesh as well. So I think if we pull this up to like 6, didn't do too much. Let's do some even more. No, maybe we need to increase the vertices as well. Yeah, you have to like play with these settings until you get like a good enough representation. It's usually easier for like flat surfaces and boxes and stuff, of course. You can change the precision as well, I think. We'll change. Drag these up, just try. Nothing much happens, sadly. But this is how to like calculate collision meshes for objects. And you can also completely turn collisions on or off as well, down in the collisions rollout here as well. Yeah, it's hidden here under the collision presets, which at the moment says block all, which will sort of make everything collide with this object in game. And you can select no collision, for example, if you want to have an object so that you can like walk through it, and other physics-based stuff won't take it into consideration as well. And there's a lot of other, as you can see, different stuff that it can collide with, so to speak. For example, like destructible or pawn or other stuff. So that's where you sort of enable or disable the collisions in game. Collision mesh. I think this one also you can sort of create your own, instead of like letting the engine figure out a collision mesh. So if you want like faces 1-to-1 to be your collision mesh, I think you can just select the same as the actual static mesh instead. And every face will just behave like a collision face as well. But I don't think you will sort of need to handle collisions too much. That might be if you're gonna try some particle effects later on, maybe. Because you're not planning on doing any games, are you?
No, I don't think so.
No.
Mostly render out movies.
Yeah, I thought as much. So if now we don't have any first-person blueprint in this. Maybe I can just show how it works quickly before we take our break. So if I add a feature and like add the first person blueprint, and add a player start. So this is just to show how collisions sort of work. So I place my player start up on this tree, which has collisions enabled at the moment. So if I play this level now, I should no, recording again. So everything has collisions now. That's the default setting on FBXs when you import them, that they have collisions enabled. So if I press play now, I will start where the player start is, and I can run around, and I sort of bump into the blocks and the trees as well. I can't go through this, and I can jump up onto these blocks, for example, since they have collisions enabled. But if I were to, for example, disable collisions for the tree models, either by going into the static mesh editor like we did before and scroll down to the collision preset and change it to no collision and save. But then I will change it for all of the tree assets. So if I play my game now, I will be able to go through this tree since collisions are turned off. And the same goes for this one and that one over there, but I'm not going to run that far. The other way is we're just going to re-enable block all, save. I can also just disable it for one item in my, or any item in my actual level as well. So if I like select this tree and have a look in the details pane for it, I can scroll down to collisions rollout and change its collision preset from default to, for example, no collision. And now I've just changed it to for this particular tree. So if I press play now, I should be able to move through this one. Yeah. But I will collide with this one over here. Oop. So that's another way of like working with collisions on different objects. So now you know that as well.
Question. What do you suggest solving this problem? I guess we may use a tool called Mineways to import Minecraft worlds into Unreal. And then that world which gets imported will be a big static mesh, I guess. And it will have flowers and bushes in it. But those should not be collisions on those, but the rest should have collisions.
Is there any way of exporting in 2 steps, like just the blocks and then just the flowers and grass, maybe?
I don't know.
Yeah,
That's,
you can
that's
maybe open it in Cinema first and
Like
try to split the mesh.
Yeah. Because I think that will probably be the best way to have like the blocks in one mesh with collision so that you can sort of move on it if needed. And yeah, like if you have particles bouncing around, they won't like bounce on top of those like grass plains.
Yeah. There's no way to disable collisions on textures, are there?
I
Probably not.
don't think so, since it's connected to the actual mesh and not the material. Maybe with some blueprinting you could solve it as well, perhaps, but I think that's we're starting to get into real deep waters.
Yeah.
Maybe it's one of those things that you can just delete out the flowers and then have it as a separate like maybe you can like paint in the flowers in Unreal by hand instead.
Yeah, I was just getting to that. Maybe it's easier to just import the flower actor and the grass actor and then use for example the Foliage tool, which we're gonna have a look at sort of now instead, and do it in Unreal Engine.
Yeah, that's better.
Maybe. Or the other way, which is the PCG one, which we're also gonna touch on later on in the course as well, which is the procedural creation graph, where you sort of build stuff with node networks to like create, well, pretty much anything. But the one I sort of did in that video I showed you on Thursday, I had like these blocks were created on top of my landscape procedurally, and also scattering like the flowers or grass on top of them.
Yeah, that is of course the preferred way. Yeah.
But moving on, we have the landscape tools. So the landscape, when you start one of these default levels, you will get this big sort of crater thingy, which is, if you look in your outliner, it's called the landscape, and that in itself consists of a bunch of these sort of tiles, which are called streaming proxies in Unreal Engine speak, because there is some sort of functionality within the game engine to sort of load these on the fly when you sort of have an open world game, so that the game doesn't have to load everything at the same time, so it can just stream different chunks to just like optimize. But this is called the landscape, and you can edit this from the menu up in the left corner, and if you go from selection mode into landscape mode instead, you will get a little new menu here with sculpting tools, and also see here, layers. This is kind of similar to how Photoshop layers work. So this default landscape consists of the base landscape and the flat middle layer, as you can see. So if I turn off this flat middle layer, it will reveal the whole base landscape instead, which also has the Unreal Engine logo imprinted in it. So these layers work like layers in Photoshop. So the one on top is sort of overriding the one below it. This also has this alpha, so if you drag this down to like 0.5 instead, it will blend between this one and the one below it. So that's a nice thing to keep in mind, because it's nice to also do new layers when you're sculpting your own landscape, for example. Up until this particular version, I think, you didn't have this little plus button here either. So if you happen to start a project in an older version of Unreal Engine, you won't see this one. And back then they had the add new layer hidden by right-clicking a layer, and then you had like new layer from this menu instead. That was really intuitive and nice. But now we have the plus button, and you can create a new one, and you get to choose if it's just a regular edit layer or if it's supposed to be a spline one. So we're just doing the layer for now, and you can rename it into whatever you like, so you keep track of what stuff are and stuff. So the one that's blue is the one you're gonna sort of work in as well. So the default tool is the sculpt, and you have different brush types and fall-offs, and tool strength and brush size, and also the fall-off. And you can see like a representation of the size of the brush in the viewport. So if you change to brush size, it will be bigger, of course.
Also looks like a quick question that next to alpha, the number, the layers themselves, they're not layers, but they're more like effects being applied to the mesh or something, because when the number goes down, it kind of blends the effects. For instance, the Unreal logo kind of slowly gets more and more shallower instead of being just like with a transparent layer on top.
Yeah, that's because each layer is really just a black and white texture, like an alpha or a
Yes.
height map. So if you think
Yeah.
of it as a height map you're painting, it will make more sense, because if you
Yeah,
blend,
yeah, it does.
yeah. So that's the reason if I drag this down, the Unreal Engine logo will, yeah, sort of blend in. But as you can see, if you just drag, you get like normal sculpting functionality. And I think it's, if you press, yeah, shift, it will go downwards instead. And the erase one will just sort of, yeah, it does what it says. And this is also a good thing to think of it as a height map instead, because it will only just erase down to like the 0 level. And well, smooth does what it sounds like, it just smooths out transitions sort of. And flatten works by sort of where you start and press and hold your cursor, it will move anything up or down to that sort of C location. So if I start pressing up here on the mountains, for example, it will make a flat piece on that exact sort of height. Can be nice if you have sculpted a big sort of mountainous area and you want a flat place for like a house or something. You can create that with a flatten tool. And the ramp is also quite nice, but I usually use that on a separate layer, and I'm going to show you why. If I just do like a couple of hills first, sort of. So the ramp, if I make a new layer, and I'm just gonna call it ramp as well. You click one start position and then your end position for the ramp, or click and drag. And when you're done, I think you press your enter key on the numerical keyboard. And then it will just, as you can see, create a flat ramp from point A to point B. And this is the reason why I usually do it on a separate layer, because then if I just want it to be a little less perfect, I can just drag this alpha down just a little bit, so it sort of fades into the underlying layers a little bit. So you get like a little bit of a slope in this case. And then you have the erosion, which sort of, yeah, does what it says. It erodes the landscape, makes it look like, yeah, weather has just done its course. And the hydro is sort of the same, makes just some sort of noise in a way, but it sort of takes height into consideration. And that there's just a regular noise, which just like makes bumps up and down anywhere really. And now I'm working in the ramp layer as well, which wasn't what I had intended, but anyways. Visibility is a bit weird. That's more like if you want to make a cave, for example, in your landscape, you can sort of paint a piece of your landscape with a visibility brush. But I do believe this is also connected to the landscape material, which we will work on later. So the landscape material that is applied onto the landscape will have to have sort of a visibility layer created in it, so that it will just make like a hole when you paint with this brush. The select and mirror and copy tools I've actually never even used myself, but I do believe you can like select a piece of landscape and copy it, and then I don't know if you can paste it in some way as well. Yeah, you have this gizmo, so copy data to gizmo. So if I move this somewhere else, I should probably get the same copies the data within the gizmo bounds to the gizmo. Okay. Yeah, I'm not really sure how this really works, but something's happening apparently. And I guess the mirror tool is sort of something similar. No. Mirror point. Oh. Get some sort of line. Apply. Yeah, it did something at least. Inside of the landscape sort of workspace, so to speak, there's also the Manage tab, where you can create new landscape tiles, for example, or a complete landscape if you have created a new. Let's do that, for example. If we just do save all and create a new clean level and just create a new landscape instead. So file, new level, and just do a basic then instead of open world, because the basic one doesn't contain any landscape by default. So if we go into landscape, you will then get directly into the Manage tab, and you can see here a preview of how big your new landscape will be. You can select how many sort of tiles you want it to be and the size and stuff. There's also this fill world button, but that might be a little bit dangerous because I think that will just create an infinite world. And there's also the option to import from file, where you can browse for a height map, and preferably, since height maps as usual, a 16-bit height map. So you can create it in any software or just grab it from a website or something. And then you will get like your height data from that instead as one of the layers on the landscape. But if we just say create new and create, it will sort of make a flat landscape with just a base layer. And there's also the paint tab, but this is also something we will get to later on when we start creating our own landscape material, because you can, if you set your landscape material up with different sort of like grass and gravel and sand, for example, you can then later on paint between those different materials onto your landscape, so you can create like, yeah, small paths or whatever. Might not be that useful for Minecraft though, but I did actually use both the landscape sculpting and the painting for creating my landscape in that little video I made that I showed you. So it's sort of, the PCG sort of reads the landscape and landscape material colors beneath it, and then places blocks on dependent on what color it is below, for example. So that might be I think maybe an idea for you as well, to just create your custom sort of landscapes, but have it look like Minecraft as well later on.
What is the PCG?
The PCG is that procedure creation graph, where you can
Okay,
sort
got
of
it.
make stuff with nodes, sort of. It's mostly used for like scattering like trees and grass on top of things, but you can make a lot of things, really. But that's what I made, and I'm gonna show you later on how to create a PCG that sort of looks at the landscape below and then places corresponding Minecraft blocks on top of it, and in 1 meter increments as well, and also looks at the material below them. So I could paint red color on the landscape material, and that was like dirt blocks, and when I painted with green, it's the grass blocks and so on. So we're gonna have a look at that later. So that's the landscape tools, really. And sort of connected to that, we also have the Foliage tool, but Foliage doesn't necessarily have to be on a landscape, so you can use it to paint things onto anything, really. So I thought I'd just show you, maybe we should jump back into our don't save, original scene or level with the trees and the little Minecraft world here. So Foliage is where you can, well, I think the default use for it is what it sounds like, to just paint like trees and grass and bushes and stuff onto your world. And as it says drop foliage here, that means drop assets here. So if we, for example, go into selection mode again and find our blocks, for example, foliage, we can select like this block and drag it here, and then we will get this pop up, because Unreal needs to create some sort of settings file for the foliage sort of detail settings for that particular object, and we need to save that data somewhere. So that's what it's sort of asking us, where to save that for the grass block. So a good idea could be to save it just in the same place where the original mesh is located, or you just make like a new folder called like Foliage, and then just save it. Some assets that you download from Fab, for example, if you get like the mega scans trees or bushes or something, they usually come with these foliage data files already, and then you can just drag and drop those into your foliage mode directly instead of creating them. So now we have our grass block in our sort of library for foliage. We can do the same with the dirt block, for example. Dirt block, and it will also ask where to save the data. Save. And we can get the tree as well. And I'll save that data just in the same place as the actual mesh. And when I sort of drag now, it will just scatter all of these, since you can see they are all selected with a little checkbox here in our sort of foliage library. And there's also a little number now, so I have just painted 263 dirt blocks, 265 grass blocks, and 250 trees. So I can undo that and instead just, for example, select only the tree, but just one click was still like 41 trees in that area, and that's maybe a little much. And you might think that, okay, so I lower my paint density then to like, it was on 0.5, so I drag it down to like 0.05. Okay, that's just 5 trees instead. But it's a little bit weird to paint with that low density. Maybe it works for trees, but maybe not for grass, for example. So there's a better way of controlling your density, really. So we bring this back to 0.5 instead. And if you click on one of these assets in your foliage library, you will get a lot of settings for that particular mesh. For example, this density value. So you need to go in and like set, for example, 1 on a tree. Now you can see I will only get better density on my trees, for example, even though I have my paint density as 0.5. So you can specify a density value for each asset. And you can change these if you shift click and select 2 types, for example. So maybe the blocks I want to have like at a density of 10 perhaps, I don't know. Okay, sorry. Then I need to uncheck my tree and check my blocks instead if I want to paint blocks instead. Maybe I want even higher. You just have to like try and set some sort of density that sort of feels correct for each and every asset, for example.
Is there a way to make them not rotate?
Yes, there's a lot of settings for objects. So, for example, you can also do, but this is more for like not Minecraft, but anything else really. Like scaling, you can set a min and max scale, for example. So if you're painting flowers, you don't want them to be uniformly scaled. So maybe you will like set like 0.8 to 1.2 or something. So we're just going to try this, even though it's blocks, just to show how it works. You can see they get a little bit of random size. And scaling is on uniform. You can change this as well if you want them to just scale on the Z axis, for example. Then you will lock X and Y, for example. And we also have this placement, like for example these blocks have their pivot point in the center, but maybe we want to paint them with a sort of underside on the actual landscape. So if we change the Z offset, for example, to maybe if we do it 50, it should be, since they're 1 meter by 1 meter. And we can also like scatter it a little bit, so some of them are a little bit floating. If I can navigate, yeah, like this. So the Z offset is also randomizable between blocks, as you can see. See if we can find the, yeah, and align to normal does what it sounds like. So if I fly over to the slope here and paint them, you can see that they're sort of following the slope. But if I uncheck the align to normal, for example, they will just be placed but have their sort of Z axis pointing upwards instead. And I think it's the random yaw setting that controls the rotation. Yeah. And random pitch, that's sort of, if you have, you still want them to sort of, like trees for example, might have not aligned to normal because they're usually growing straight up, but maybe you want a slight random pitch, whatever, rotate them around the X and Y axis. You can try that with the actual tree instead. So we uncheck the blocks and check the tree instead. Have it align, not aligned to normal, by the way. So we can paint, just increase this to like 2 maybe. Oh no, I'll just do a bigger brush size maybe. So if I paint some trees onto my hill here, they're not aligning to the normal as they should. I'm just gonna undo a couple of steps. Not that one apparently. And if we set a random pitch angle of like 1 degree, align to normal, no. They should at least have a little bit of, okay, that's a little bit too low to be able to see. Maybe so we just increase it to 5 degrees for now, just so we can see something happen. I don't know if you see, but they're a little bit crooked. That's maybe a good sort of setting for trees, for example. But if you're painting like lamp posts, you don't want the random pitch angle and not aligned to normal, for example.
Just a quick question. Are you recording, by the way?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I remember to start recording again. So
Since you said lampposts,
Yeah.
in the example for lampposts, can you do straight lines when you paint foliage?
The ramp was kind of like that.
Yeah, no, not in the foliage painting tool. That's more of a PCG thing in that case. Or there's also a third way of placing stuff in Unreal Engine, which we won't look at, but you can create a blueprint, which can sort of create objects in your viewport, and there you can sort of space them with incremental distances and also onto like spline objects and stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I was just thinking if there's a tool similar to the ramp.
Not in the foliage mode, but
Yeah.
no. But there's other ways of making, for example, putting lampposts beside of a road, for example, with like 10-meter increments and stuff.
Yeah, or like a long road with cherry trees on the side, then you can dictate how much.
Yeah, exactly. This is more of a like just painting large areas and creating like forests and well, details.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, it's great. Yeah, it looks good.
A question.
Yeah.
Painting foliage and trees, flowers, and bushes like this is great, but in landscape modeling mode, it would be great. Maybe you are going to show this later, but would be great to be able to model the landscape with the Minecraft blocks directly. Is that possible?
Like in the landscape, sort of.
Yeah, you see the blocks getting placed in the grid. It will be very intuitive to make the landscape if you see the block at once instead of this gray smooth.
Yeah, I will show you, but that is with that PCG function.
Aha. Okay.
So that's after vacation. We will dig into one way of doing it.
Okay.
So I think you might like that function for like landscaping the horizon,
world.
maybe, yeah, and then have your sort of hero chunk where stuff happens that is imported mesh from wherever. Okay, now my computer started acting up again, sadly.
Like there is a landscaping tool as well in Axiom. Have you tried it, Jocke?
Yeah, very briefly.
Yeah, it's
It was
sort of exactly like how you want it to work.
Yeah.
But then, of course, it's not in Unreal Engine.
No, that's the thing. For creativity reasons, it's much nicer to be able to edit things on the fly in the same tool. So my idea was to have a, like in Cinema maybe, where you have the cloner tool that clones objects onto a mesh, but it will adhere to a grid-based placement of the blocks. So you use the same brushes as you showed me earlier while modeling the landscape, but it will just clone blocks onto the landscape mesh.
Yeah.
But maybe that's what you will show later.
Yeah, sort of. Maybe, and now I'm just thinking out loud here, but maybe you can do some settings for blocks. Maybe if we just set like, oh no, not the tree. Thank you very much. if you get the right settings here, like with the density and like scaling set to 1 and like not aligned to normal and no random yaw, maybe you can like get the right exact settings so that the blocks will sort of end up next to each other. Maybe. I'm really not sure.
It's super important that it does, because otherwise it will not be Minecraft, and
No.
we will not get anything approved.
No, exactly. I'm not.
Does these are these like things you're painting out? Do they become like a group that you move at once, or do they become like single objects that you can move individually?
Yeah, I was gonna get to that as well. So the land or the foliage paint in Unreal Engine is really, really nice. It's one of the better ones, I must say, since you control stuff on a object sort of level. And also if I like paint a couple of trees here, I can also go into the select mode here instead of paint, and I can just select any object I've painted and just drag it as any object really, or rotate it. Okay, now I have rotation snapping. So this is like outside of the sort of scattering settings. I can always like select something and select one and delete it, for example. So I can just paint and then sort of art direct manually things later on as well.
So one follow-up question to that.
Mm-hmm.
So say we want to take this exact tree and replace it with another type of tree.
Yes.
Is there a way to do that?
Yeah. I do believe I can select this one, and in the mesh setting here I can select another one, another object. Okay, that's for all of the trees, so that's no good.
Do you maybe have to like flatten the foliage mode or something like that? Because I remember you showed us in the first session in the outliner you could just like point to a different object and then it would replace it.
Exactly, but this is like, since all the trees are instanced meshes, I can only change all of them, it seems, even though I'm in select mode. Maybe I can... No. That's a really good question, really, if you can like just select one instance and change it into something else instead.
I guess you have to delete it and drop your own tree into the same place.
Yeah, it would seem like that's the way, yeah. So that, okay, I want this tree to be something else instead. Just delete it and go into selection mode and just drag a static mesh in instead.
Okay, that's also very easy.
Can you make an instant as an individual object? Like in Cinema, you can just convert an instant object into an editable object.
Well, since so these are two static meshes now instead of the foliage sort of trees. They are always like instanced as long as they're pointing to the same static mesh. So I can, even though this is a copy of this one, I can always select this one and choose another like static mesh for this object, for example.
Okay.
So are static meshes sort of instances by default?
Yes,
Okay.
since each sort of object you drag into your viewport is only a placeholder for a mesh and a material, sort of. But back to our foliage again. So I don't know if you've noticed, but every time I change some setting so far, I've just pressed Control C and undone stuff and then redo it. And that's a little bit of a weird way of working, but there's also, if I just select the grass blocks now, for example, and I want to change maybe so that they are aligned to normal, for example, then I have this reapply brush. And if I have only the grass blocks selected in my sort of library and change the align to normal, then I can just paint over objects already scattered, and I will reapply these new settings to the ones I paint on. So that's a really powerful part of the foliage tool, which I don't think any other of these painting functions in other 3D applications really usually have. And the same way with the eraser, for example, you will only erase from the actual actors that you've selected. So if I only selected, for example, dirt blocks here, it will only erase the dirt blocks, not the trees and not the grass. And other way around, if I select, for example, the tree now, only trees will be deleted when I paint over them. So the paint and the reapply and the erase are really, really nice in that way. There's also the fill. Don't click that on your landscape. Just a little tip. You can fill on like a static mesh, for example. So if I have my grass block selected and fill onto my tree, for example, it will just fill with these fill settings onto the tree. But you can probably figure out what will happen if I were to press fill on my landscape. Here's also another nice feature in the foliage tool is if I choose the paint, for example, and like select both of these and start painting, it will paint on landscape and other static meshes, for example, as long as you have your filters here. So if I change it to and uncheck the static mesh, it will only paint onto the landscape, for example. And the other way around, if I only select the static meshes, it will only paint on other static meshes and not on the landscape. Oh. Welcome back.
Sorry, my what was that?
I don't know. You disconnected and reconnected again.
You sound like Donald Duck.
Oh, okay.
No, it sounds okay to me.
This is weird. Okay, don't mind me.
And you can also like select so that you can paint foliage onto other foliage items.
Joachim is dying.
Oh, I guess I have to listen to this until the end.
Yeah, it's just another half an hour or something. So
I will manage.
So this is also kind of nice setting if you're like having. That's more of a. Sorry. Like
I will turn my camera off, maybe.
a non-Minecrafty thing, but if you were like to create a landscape and drop in like a house, for example, and you want to paint grass only on the sort of garden and not inside of the house, you can just paint on certain parts, for example. There's also some settings. I think that's what happened when I tried painting trees earlier onto this really. Now you're echoing us, Yuki. And I can hear the Donald Duck voice.
It's crazy.
I can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear the Donald Duck through your microphone.
Yeah. So as you can see, I can only paint the trees where the slope is at a specific angle. That's also a setting in the sort of object here. You can see under the placement, it has something called ground slope angle, minimum and maximum 45 degrees. So if I were to increase the maximum angle to like 90 degrees, I should be able to paint trees onto this slope as well. So you can sort of, if you tweak these numbers, you can sort of paint trees only on where they should actually grow and not like on a cliff side, for example.
So technically, if you have capo foliage selected, you can have the trees to cut out if it's too steep, and then only the grass continue, and then goes into little pebbles and whatnot. Okay, cool.
Exactly. And also you can see height, so you can specify that now trees can only grow between these two sort of height values, or this particular tree, and if we get to a higher altitude, change to some other mesh, for example. So it's a really, if you set these things up, you can sort of just zoom out and grab a really big ass brush and just paint like sort of parametrically a whole forest, for example. But that would take some setting up first. But once you've done that, you're just good to go.
Damn, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's a really powerful tool, and I don't think people realize how much things you can actually do here, and with the reapply brush and stuff. And just now I want to change settings for like this little dab of trees. So if I select this now and the reapply, maybe I want to change the scaling on a couple of trees so that they're like really big. So like 1.5 to like 3 times instead on the scale. And then I can just paint a few trees bigger, for example. And then there's also always just the select tool where I can just, no, I want this tree to be here instead, and I want it to be this big.
So the reapply brush, is that just like paint with new settings?
Yes.
Okay.
And you're always just interacting with the items from your library that you've selected as well.
Gotcha.
But I do believe that even though I changed this tree manually with the select, if I were to do the reapply brush on top of it, it should probably be overridden with this new scale from the override instead. Yeah.
Like, is there a limit to how much you should paint? But I guess because of Nanite, it's kind of like you can paint as much as you want, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And also this will, if you have set up LODs on your trees, for example, which we have. So if I disable Nanite instead, you can see that these trees are using their LOD levels instead, even though they are in a foliage mode, sort of. So even the big ass tree will scale down to the jumbled mess when I get far away. So that is really a really powerful tool, not only for like grass and bushes, but really for anything that you need to like place a little bit randomly, but also with some sort of control. So we have half an hour left today. I'm not sure if I will manage to show you completely the sequencer today, but maybe I can begin and then we can do a recap after vacation. What do you think?
Sounds good to me.
Same.
Unless you have any more questions about the foliage and stuff now.
That sounds good to me. Go ahead.
Okay. Just need to wait for my computer to get back online as well. Here we go. Okay. So if I'm just gonna nanite these again because that looks a little better, and I'm also gonna just delete a couple of these weird blocks that I painted out here. So erase. Okay. So sequencer is from the beginning a tool for like setting up cutscenes in your games, and it has sort of grown into a sort of, this is where we create rendered videos from Unreal Engine and exporting them to like video format, and you access it from this menu or this button up here, where you can add a level sequence, and then you get a prompt to save your level sequence somewhere. I usually I create a sequences folder in my content folder, or sometimes I just nest them in with the levels folder. Doesn't really matter, as long as you keep track of where you put your stuff. That's nice. So we'll just name this new level sequence for now, but it's, as usual, a good idea to, name stuff what they actually are. So if you're doing a specific shot, maybe you want to name that shot whatever it's supposed to be, so you can find your things later on. So once you've done that, you will get this sequencer workspace, which is kind of similar to like After Effects or Premiere if you're working in those or started them. But there's nothing in here at the moment. We don't even have a camera in our world at the moment. So I think we're gonna just start by creating a camera. So you can navigate your viewport, and there's a couple of ways to create a camera. Either you just navigate to a place here, and in your sequencer you can click this little camera button, and it will, as you can see, create a new camera and also add it into this sequence. Let's see if, yeah, and it's also created a cinematic camera actor in our sort of world. And a few things to keep in mind now, because now we are piloting this camera, and we can see this up here in the sort of right part, where we have this eject button. So if we press this one, we will jump out of the camera and just into like normal perspective mode instead. And if we want to jump back into our camera, we can either just press this lock camera actor to selected viewport button down in the sequencer, and if we press it again, we will jump out into perspective instead. Or we can select the camera, the actual camera actor in our scene, and when we do that, we will also get a small preview window of what that camera is seeing. But that's only visible when you have the camera selected, unless you press this little tiny pin preview button down here. Then you can actually select other objects and still keep your preview. So that's a nice way of like placing things in view for the camera in a more controlled way. But for now we're gonna pilot this camera, and we did this by either pressing this one, or you can select the object and right click it and select the pilot from the menu. We also want to have this screen in the camera's sort of aspect ratio. We're gonna come back to that pilot thing, because you can actually pilot any object. It's really weird, but it might be useful sometimes. Maybe we're just gonna have a look at that real quick before we move on. So if you want to place an object in a really specific or weird place, which might be difficult to reach sometimes, you can right click and pilot this tree, for example. So now I'm actually, when I'm moving around, I am the tree now. So if I want to place it like here, and then
This should be the quote for this class.
I am the tree.
I am the tree now.
I played a game called Everything, and you could be anything. You can be literally anything.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
But as you can see, it also like keeps the actual angle in which I'm looking when I stop pilot the tree. So I think I'm gonna undo that and have it where it was placed from the beginning. But it can be nice to know, maybe for like light sources can be a good idea to sometimes pilot. You just get the spotlight in a very specific direction. Okay, so back to the sequencer. We have a camera in our sequence now, and you can drop anything really into the sequencer to animate it. But let's just start with this camera for now. And as you can see, we can open up its transform, and it has the usual location, rotation, scale values, and also add keyframe buttons for anything really here. So if we press this keyframe, add new keyframe for the whole transform, it will just add keyframes for every value. As you can see, if I open up the location, the rotation as well, all of them will have keyframes. But if you undo that, you can also just set a keyframe for a specific value, for example, if you just want the Y location, for example. But usually it's just easiest to just press the transform set keyframe. So now we have our camera's position for frame 0 set. That's just like animating stuff in like really any software. And then we can scrub the time. And since we're piloting the camera, we can move it. And once again, press our transform. And now we've set the sort of keyframes for that camera's movement. And if we exit out of piloting the camera, we can also now in our viewport see sort of a line for its sort of keyframes, and we can actually interact with these. So if I press this point, that's the last sort of keyframe stop, and I can move the camera in here as well, but then I need to also update the keyframe position, of course. But you can sort of see a representation of the camera's movement. So if I were to like place another keyframe here and just move the camera up on the Z-axis, you can see that we will get like a Bezier sort of spline showing how the camera will move in this animation. And as most software, the default interpolation is set to like S-curve, like accelerating and deaccelerating. But you can select any keyframe or all of them by dragging a box and right click and like set linear instead, and you can see it also changes the shape in the viewport. So maybe we want to like just make the start ones linear and the end ones, perhaps. Oh, okay, missed those. Linear. And you can also see the little preview window there updating what the camera actually sees as well. So that's like the basic sort of movement of animation. But as you can see, the camera has also its aperture and focal length and focus distance settings exposed directly. So you can actually also animate those by either just changing the aperture. You can see that we will get a little bit of blur as well. And if I move back as well, I set my so the depth of field is kind of nice in Unreal Engine, since you get the feedback directly in your viewport. And of course these values are also keyframeable, so you can get these sort of focus shifts along the animation and stuff, of course.
A question about the curves. And in After Effects, you can add little noise, little wiggle to the curves to make it handheld, for instance. Is that possible in Unreal?
Yes, and it's
okay.
kind of easy as well. Yeah, I'm gonna show you one more thing and then a little bit of the noise, and I think we're sort of done for today, and we can recap all of this after vacation and move on to more specific things in the sequencer as well. But if we just clear all of these keyframes and I change the focal length to something a little bit more workable. Maybe if we want to just make like this movement, but with some sort of handheld shake, as you might call it, then we will sort of set our start frame or keyframe and the end keyframe maybe moving like to here. And so now it's just like this smooth movement, and if we want that to be a little bit jumpy, maybe if I collapse this transform and on the camera actor I can press this plus button which says track, and I can add another transform track. No, it didn't work. No, sorry, I think it's, yeah, sorry. It's on the transform track. I press the plus, and then I can add like an additive transform track for that one. So I have my standard transform with the keyframes, and then I have a additive transform layer as well. And if I hold my mouse over it, will show a faint text that says additive as well. And if I open this additive one up and the location as well, and if we wanted to just like jump a little bit on the C axis, I can right click this C value and choose the override with double pearly noise, and then we will get this waveform instead of keyframes. So if I play this now, you can see that it's really subtle at the moment because
that's awesome.
and you can right click this waveform track here and choose the pearly noise channels, and then you can change the frequency, amplitude and offset.
Yeah, that's way easier than enough.
So if I increase the frequency and maybe the amplitude to like 3 or 4, this will be really shaky. I can play. You can see it's someone with Parkinson or something holding the camera. So it's really easy to change this, and you also see sort of a representation both in the waveform down here and in the actual viewport. If I were to stop previewing the camera, you can see that the line for the camera, I don't know if you can see that in or over Teams, but if I make this noise amplitude bigger, you can see that the actual line will represent the noise as well. And well, also the frequency. So if we lower it to like 0 point something, we'll just get this nice wave instead. So when we preview this camera now, it should be kind of high up and down, but a smooth movement at least. And this is also, you can apply it to anything really. So if I were to, we're just going to remove these keyframes again from the camera, so it's just still instead. So now it's only got the sort of noise up and down. And I'm gonna remove this extra transform track again also. But maybe if I want this tree to like just vibrate or rotate or something, then I can drag this tree from my outliner into my sequencer. And you can see the tree has also a transform, and then I can of course like keyframe its rotation and rotate it a little bit here and set a new keyframe, and it will rotate when I play my animation. And you can do the same thing here and just like add an additive track and like maybe do a random noise on the C scale, for example. So override, and it will rotate and scale up and down. Maybe not the most useful animation, but it's just an example.
Yeah, so it's very nice that you can just drag and drop from the outliner into the timeline.
Yes, and also as you can see, when I pulled the tree into my sequencer, it only show me the transform to begin with, except unlike the camera, which had like aperture and focal length added as well, but anything has like more tracks that you can add, either by pressing the little plus button on the actual actor here.
Can you keyframe what model it's referencing?
Yes.
Nice.
Because when you're in sequencer mode, you can see that we also get this add a keyframe for this property down in the details pane. So I don't know how this works, but if I add a keyframe for my static mesh, I apparently now have set a keyframe for this tree here. So if I move one frame over, I don't know if I change it to something else on that frame, it's changing. Yes, it is. So you've keyframed what mesh this sort of actor is referencing on a specific frame.
Okay, that's really good.
And here's also another thing that I sort of touched on Thursday. I'm just going to remove these keyframes because this will be weird to preview. You remember this hidden in game? You can also keyframe this one. So, for example, you want your tree to be visible up until this frame, and the next one it's not supposed to be visible, for example, if you want to swap it out or have it explode or something. So you can also keyframe that if an item is supposed to be viewable or not. So you can pretty much like keyframe not all like settings, but a large amount of them, and the ones you can't access directly from here you can probably access through a blueprint or something. You can also, I think, change no, you can't change the material in sequencer, but
So you need a new static mesh with a different material to
I think
to be able to cycle that. No.
well, there is a way, but it's you have to do a blueprint to change materials like on render time or in game, sort of, and that's a little bit more difficult. I think your way would be easier to just make a copy of the static mesh and drag out and have other material applied to it, and then just switch between the two.
Cool. One more question. Is there, like, for example, in cinema, you can make a camera look at something, like, so if you drag the camera or like move the camera, it will always like orient to that object.
Yeah, that is actually a setting on the actual camera object. It has a look at tracking settings here, and you can use the enable look at, and you can select actor to track, for example. So you can pick like the tree. So now if I move this tree, the camera will always look at that actor. And there's a good way then to just like, instead of having it look at the tree, for example, if we just add like a cube instead, and okay, now my computer went into hibernation mode, so let's wait a few seconds.
Is this like essentially adding a null object?
Yeah, exactly. There are no null objects in Unreal Engine, but I usually use like just a cube or a sphere or something, and then just hit the hidden in game button for it. So it won't be rendered in your movie or game, but you can use it as a sort of pivot point or look at point or something.
So hiding game also hides it from a render.
Yes, because when you render from a sequencer, that is considered in-game in Unreal Engine.
Could you show us like how you export something as well?
Yeah, we need to enable a plugin for that. I can just show you quickly how to enable it, but there's a lot of settings in that one which we will go through later on as well.
Okay, yeah.
Once my computer gets back to... you can see this little, I don't know what it's called, the clap thingy, which says on the tooltip, render this movie or to a video, image or frame sequence. There's 3 buttons, and it only has the legacy capture enabled by default. So we need to go up into plugins and search for sequencer. And find the sorry, it's render queue. So you need to enable this movie render queue add-on, and if you want the additional render passes, might as well, even though they're in beta mode, but anyways. So you enable those and restart your engine, and you will get another option on the 3 buttons here for using the movie render queue interface for rendering video instead, where you can specify more, well, a lot of settings for rendering, like samples and anti-aliasing and file format and warm-up frames and a lot of other interesting things which are useful in Unreal Engine. But we will get more into this later on in the course as well. That's one of the planned parts, of course.
Cool, thank you so much.
Yeah, I guess that's it for today.
Thank you. Perfect timing.
Yeah. But we will do a little bit of a recap on everything when we get back. I mean, it's a couple of weeks and vacation brain and all that, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, have a nice...
Have a good vacation.
Yeah, have a nice...
Have a nice vacation.
I will upload today's video as well eventually when I've put the 2 halves together and drop them onto YouTube. And
Thank you.
maybe I will just drop them onto YouTube for now and then just collect them and send them to you after the course as video files, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Awesome.